Welcome back to Revenue Stream, where we
Revenue search, darling. Revenue search.
Revenue Search, the live stream Revenue Search. I pulled it all together for brevity. You know how important brevity is for this show. Like to keep things concise and succinct at all times. My name is Mark Creaser, my co-host, Siam Kidd, and we are in military fatigues here. This is an operation and a half designed to drag capital into Bittensor, where it can be deployed into fantastic projects. And you've got internet today and you're at home, you're not in your car, so this is excellent news.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And this dress coordination was coincidental. Just like this is Revenue Search episode 37, and we have subnet 37. Again, as Keith Singery would say, synchronicities are everywhere. Whatever that means.
Whatever that means, Keith. Yeah. Good. Well, so yeah, subnet 37. What in the digital green room? I assume you're driving.
I am indeed. So this is cool. I've been looking forward to this Revenue Search because, like, crypto is a murky world. There's lots of anonymous people. You don't know who you can trust. Yada yada yada. And I met a strapping young lad in Paris. Sounds dodgy, I know. Meaning in a nice way. A guy called Austin at Proof of Talk. And we actually spent a fair bit of time, like you do at events, you make friends with a random stranger and then you just hang around. And I hang around Austin quite a lot. He came to our little drink soiree at the end of Proof of Talk. He's like 9 foot tall, got a very smart cookie. And it was cool. There was a moment where we're in like some room and there was like, Austin was having a one-to-one with Cons, Jacob, and I was just stood there, just like listening. And like Austin and Jacob were just like bouncing forth, and Jacob was trying to figure out what a subnet did, and I just found it absolutely fascinating. So, so I can hand on my heart say he's a genuinely nice guy. He has nothing but great intentions, and he's tackling probably the most existential threat humans have seen, I think, ever. I know, so it's going to be hard to try and talk about everything we need to do, and there are lots of long answers to very simple questions. So I have said, look, try and keep the answers short. So without further ado,
Let's say stop sucking up the airtime. Let's get him in.
There we go.
Hey guys, what's going on?
All is good. I've had my good coffee, nice hot cross buns. I'm ready to roll. Who are you, Austin?
Amazing. First of all, I can't believe this is episode 37 when we're airing subnet 37. That's pretty crazy.
And that was not correlated at all.
Yeah. Wow. I had no idea. That's quite the coincidence. But I'm Austin. I'm the founder of the new subnet 37, Aurelius. I had a great time in Paris, like you said. I think I was kicking around the idea for what is now Aurelius earlier on in the summer, and went to Paris to kind of bounce this idea off of people in the ecosystem. Like I said, I had the opportunity to speak to Const about it, and a lot of other folks, and I would say that was such an encouraging conference to go to and speak to all the people in the ecosystem. It was the first Bittensor event I'd been to, and I came away from that just thinking, I've got to make this a reality. Like, this is so much going on. There's so many people with huge ideas and new groundbreaking things happening all the time in Bittensor. So fast forward to today. Now the subnet's a reality, and we're just kind of introducing it to the community, and yeah, excited to be here.
Amazing. So I've got two big reservations with what you're tackling, as I mentioned, and I thought what we should do, and I know you got some slides to show, so I'm going to air out my two big reservations, which I even said to you in Paris.
Yeah.
And so let's do that, and then you got some slides to show. And hopefully I have no idea what your slides are going to show, but hopefully it sort of addresses what those big concerns are, and I think people will subconsciously also have those same concerns when they figure out what you're doing. So, from basic standpoint, Aurelius is there for AI alignment. And if you look at one of my YouTube videos that I put out recently, it was a presentation from the September event. I talk about, the existential threat of AI. And I did a big deep dive looking into what Jan LeCun is saying, because he's gone from AGI will never exist, or it'll be like 100 years to like, oh, it'll be 30 years. And now he's like, oh shit, probably 5 to 10 years. And then on the other side of the coin, you have another godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, who says he thinks it's 50-50% chance of AI just in like wiping us out, but not through hatred or evil, just via indifference, which is even crazier. And he's basically sorting out his life affairs. So you have these two big boys saying, sort of on opposing sides. Now, the two reservations I had when we first spoke about this months ago was, it's a massive topic. AI is the new Cold War. It's a geopolitical super weapon. I believe that governments will commandeer chunks of the leading frontier lab. So I see a time where, I don't know, the government will just go in and go, right, Scam Altman, we now own a chunk of OpenAI, military protection on certain parts of your installations, and then it's now US AI, sovereign AI, and it's there to combat or just always be better than the Chinese one, and it's just a Cold War. So what can a tiny little nascent subnet do about AI alignment when it's just 2 megapowers just battling it out? That's one reservation I have. The other reservation I have is, how the hell are you going to get revenue? I still don't understand or see how you can do that. And when you don't have revenue that can support the alpha holders or the price or the liquidity pools, price will just go down forever. And then your emissions go down, then you lose just weight, so to speak. So they're my two reservations. I'm hoping you've got good answers for them. Can you press the little plus button at the bottom to share slides?
Yeah, I've got my share screen here. I'll just go ahead and throw these about.
There we go.
Can you guys see that?
Boom. Yeah, perfect.
All right. Shall I go ahead and dive in? I'll do my best to answer those questions. I think I can talk about those specifically, and those are very good questions that I've been thinking about for a long time as well. I think that, when I started doing research, I do a lot of just reading scientific, peer review papers on alignment, listening to people that you mentioned, like Jan LeCun and Hinton and lots of other thought leaders in the area. And it's really terrifying. It's a terrifying, when you go down the rabbit hole and you start to put, just draw logical conclusions on where we're at today and where we're going, you come to some potentially disturbing conclusions. And so I'll talk more on those specific questions, but first, we'll just do a high level overview on what alignment is. That's going to be the number one takeaway. I've got our mission, our vision statement here. We're subnet 37. It has recently been transitioned over to the Aurelius team. It was a fine-tuning subnet from Macrocosmos prior to this. And so quickly, what I'll be covering, like I said, the most common question I have in Siam, I think this is probably something we take for granted, having, done some homework on this, is not everyone understands what it is. And it's a fair question, what is alignment? Because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. In my opinion, we'll go through what I think is the best way to conceptualize this, and I'll give an example. And that'll be the most important thing that I hit over the head on this. And then if we have time, we'll talk about some of the market dynamics, our short-term goals, and our long-term vision. But here we go. Okay, so what is alignment? Well, we have our definition over there on the left, and I'll let you go ahead and read that. It's all well and good. But I like to think about alignment as a mode of control over a model. And that's because what you're doing when you're aligning a model is you're taking this giant probability distribution. So when it has an output, it samples from this giant probability distribution. And what you're doing is you're trying to nudge the way that it answers or the way that it reasons in a specific direction by showing it good examples of rules or principles or modes of reasoning that you would like it to follow. So all of that is exercising a measure of control in the model's outputs. And you can imagine how this is extremely important to get right, because AI is already integrated in everything under the sun today and tomorrow, and especially in the next couple of years, we'll see healthcare, economic, military applications all proliferate with AI systems that are given more and more autonomy over these parts of society. And so Now I want to talk about, I won't go through this full example. This is identical to a training regimen for any AI model. So the only thing I want to call out here is, what's the difference between training a model and aligning a model? Well, when you train a model, you have this giant corpus of data. And as you scale this body of data, the capabilities or the intelligence of the model scales with the data. And the more, the better. And AI is extremely data hungry. And I want to say like 1% or even less than 1% of the total data that an AI is trained on is alignment data. And even though it's a really, really small slice, the impact that this little slice of data has on the overall model's behavior, things like its tone, its personality, its default modes of reasoning or ethics or philosophies, almost all of that comes from this alignment data. So its impact is really, really profound when you talk about the full body of data on the AI's behavior as a whole. So we'll keep going. The type of data that is used since 2021, the gold standard for data in the alignment. So when you train a reward model, use it in reinforcement learning, what you're using is RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback. And the most popular paradigm for using this data is something called HHH, helpful, honest, and harmless. So let's quickly take a look at this data. So the very simplistic, that's the number one takeaway I want you guys to have. Here you have how to explain fireworks. You have 2 responses. And then it's human data. So a human would have been trained to take a look and choose the one that they prefer. This one is for harmlessness. Here's another one for honesty. Same simple concept. So Mark, you get a whole bunch of this data, and I'll go quickly. I don't want to spend too much time on all this chart stuff, so I'll keep speeding ahead. But on the X, on the X, I know Siam wouldn't. I knew you would enjoy this. So buckle up. We got 2 more hours.
I love this shit. I love geeking out.
Okay, so on the x-axis we have compute. On the y-axis we have risk, and we'll speed ahead through pre-trained supervised fine-tuning. So this is where all that data, you get a whole bunch of that data. You call up Scale AI and say, we need all the HHH data we can get, and we're going to trade this reward model. And what happens is, this is what's happening under the hood. And I am going to pause here because this is the most important thing. So what this shows is HHH as a proxy, right? We want the compute to scale. We want the ability of the models to scale, but we want the risk to be in check. We want it to be aligned to these core principles. And so I'm calling it a proxy. Why am I calling it a proxy? Well, that's because this is a massive oversimplification of what we're looking at right now. This is a 2D chart. And in reality, the data is high dimensional. They're called tensors. And it exists in high dimensional space called the latent space. The latent space is kind of like a mental map of the model where relationships between abstract concepts are encoded and understood by the model. So for example, you have concepts like king and queen in the latent space, and the distance between those encapsulates gender. But if you have concepts like Paris and Rome, the distance between them encapsulates geography. And in this latent space, there's also dimensions for concepts like justice and greed and lots of other high, like abstract ideas. So I'll keep moving ahead in this example, but I just want to call that out, that this is an oversimplification just to help us understand. But HHH data, it actually works really well. And this is why it's the gold standard, and it has been for a while. The problem, spoiler alert, it actually works a little too well, and I'll explain why. But if we want to move it to something more advanced, it'd be great to upgrade this because HHH doesn't encapsulate everything. So if we want to give it a set of rules or principles or more nuanced ways to reason, maybe under uncertainty or when ideas conflict, well, we could give it something like a constitution. And this is a widely accepted idea. People have tried to do this. So let's run the same play. We have our, constitutional area alignment where we were trying to get, and we introduce more RLHF data, and we run the same play. And if you think It's as simple as going from A to B. That would be really nice, and Aurelius would not need to exist. But unfortunately, that's not what we see. And this is much more in line with what we see. So what's happening here? Well, here we have our nice concise alignment. Down here we have this big distribution, and it sort of goes off the rails. And this is where I'll start to wrap things up and pull Aurelius into the picture. But the two problems that we're encountering here, number one, as you probably predicted, the data is insufficient. Those simple A/B comparisons, there's not enough information contained in the data itself to pierce into the latent space and remap the neural pathways that the model is using to reason. You're only manipulating the surface level, and that's a function of insufficient data quality. The second one is actually extremely interesting to me, and this speaks to the virtues of Bittensor, and that is centralization is actually a problem in this picture as well. So why is centralization a problem? Well, it turns out, and a lot of these methodologies that people are using to generate data, designing prompts and scoring systems and sourcing the human labor from specific the global south and some areas where potentially there's discrepancies in the quality of the data as well as bias. And furthermore, inside closed labs, the people who design these alignment pipelines, it's usually 4 or 5 people at most. And so models, as we all know, they're extremely good at picking up on patterns. And what happens is they find statistical similarities between the prompts and how they get scored according to certain prompts. And they think to themselves, oh, this looks like one of those prompts that last time I answered like this and this happened. And last time I did this and this happened. So that the model figures out this little game. It's a phenomenon called alignment faking. It knows it's in a training environment.
Yeah.
And due to that, it'll tell you what it knows you want to hear. But in actual deployment, it'll behave in ways that are totally unpredictable and go off the rails. So moving ahead, overfitting, I'll skip over this concept. This is just the same. I already explained what it is. It's a machine learning term. There's a gravitational pull from the former alignment state, and it's in the latent space. So anything downstream of that is being contorted to go through this over reinforced HHH proxy, and it's causing us a lot of problems. Well, let's get through this. It's just some interesting anthropomorphizing the model a little bit, but we'll skip through that. So how do we fix this problem? And this is where Aurelius comes into the picture. Well, let's just talk about our issues. Data, we need higher quality data. Okay, it needs to be producible at scale because RLHF data is slow and expensive to produce. So a fast-growing area of research now is to use synthetic data. Synthetic data is data generated by models themselves, and it's faster and cheaper to produce. There's pros and cons, but one of the big pros, faster and cheaper. It's also in a lot of instances able to capture a lot more information, so it's much more high-quality data. So we need higher quality data, faster and cheaper from a decentralized source. That's where Aurelius comes into the picture. That's exactly why we built our subnet to address this problem. We think we do have solutions to each of those problems that we see in the current data paradigm for aligning models. But to finish out this example, we have our desired alignment state. So essentially, when you have enough of the right data, you're able to more successfully move this alignment proxy into something that's more sophisticated. Okay. And so here's just the problem recap. Speed through this. Already talked about all this. Solution, high risk, data, faster and cheaper, and decentralized. And so now I'll give you guys a quick and dirty understanding of how it all works. And so what I'm about to explain is where we would like to get, right? There's, as you guys know, it's incentive mechanisms and just building on Bittensor as a whole, it's a gradual iterative process. And so for us to get to a place where we have a 24/7, 365 data engine that involves miners antagonizing models, red teaming models, finding out where they're strong, where they're weak, where they're vulnerable, charting out that landscape. Then they pass that information to the validators. It's the validator's job to grade and quantify the data in accordance with something like a constitution. And that's maintained by the tribunate, which is a function of my subnet that we can talk about later if we have time. But just this is a prototype of a constitution, just to give you some example. Everything's in flux here. It's still being dialed in, but right away you can see why not capture honesty and helpfulness and harmlessness and lots of other categories of dimension as well. And why not, to the best of our ability, categorize these with more granularity? So this is where the deeper picture of the data comes in, with the intent of piercing into the latent space with higher resolution data and manipulating that space. So now I'll talk quickly on the market opportunity for this type of data, and then I'll finish up by some of the clientele for this, and then turn it over to you guys if you have questions. So we have AI training data sets, data labeling, and synthetic data. Right off the bat, all three of these are growing extremely fast, and we think there's an opportunity for the data that Aurelius produces across all three of these segments. And that's because our data starts as synthetic data. That's what the miners are. They're digging up raw crude oil synthetic data. But it's our incentive mechanism and our subnet itself. It's their job through human verification, QA/QC, data science, and transforming the data. The goal is to package it into enterprise-grade fine-tuning data sets. So just very, very refined product that is specifically for improving the performance of models in terms of specific alignment dimensions, instead of just lump sums of raw data. And I've mentioned enterprise a few times. We're laser focused on the enterprise segment. That is where we believe the biggest opportunity lies for this data, but there's other applications as well. Alignment researchers, educational institutions, government institutions, regulatory bodies. I'll just wrap up this part. This is what we're working on today, and this is we're really excited to bring this idea to Bittensor. We think this is the perfect place for an alignment platform to be born, is on Bittensor. And this speaks a little bit more to the long-term vision of why we're building Aurelius and what we think it could be. But in the short term, there's actually, Siam, there's not that many players who are dedicated to producing alignment data. And when you start to look around, you see players like Scale AI and Surge AI and a few other smaller players who are in this arena. But the total category of data is much more crowded and much more competitive than specifically alignment data. And there's a few reasons for that. You talked about some of the geopolitical aspects, and if alignment is control over a model, it makes sense why people are more reticent to outsource their alignment data from someone else. But and this does speak to answer one of your questions from earlier. Basically, our plan is to get scientific and independent credibility. And one way we can do that is by publishing data sets, places like Hugging Face, and incentivizing peer-reviewed research that shows how much more performant models can become after fine-tuning on our data sets. So we have a few tools in the toolkit to help us get to a platform of respect in the industry and gain some credibility. But I've already gone over a little bit on time. I'm going to hand it back to you guys for questions.
I've got a lot of, again, all my questions are random. They're not in any order. Okay, synthetic data.
Yeah.
Like, I get, if we take subnet 54, Yanas, they do financial pen testing, so to speak. So they have to come up with a bunch of synthetic data that simulates, identities, and then that's what they sell. And then they're testing different AIs to see if it can detect them well. What sorts of synthetic data would Aurelius create? Is it like any data for any silo or what?
So this touches on a concept in alignment called LLM as a judge. Because if you remember that the first data I showed you, right, it's RLA, it's human feedback data. So because of the limitations on scaling and the price and the potential bias and the slow timeframes for scaling that data, it's more and more common that people use LLMs that are trained to answer, this is a good answer, this is a bad answer, this is aligned, this is misaligned. And when you have any of that data, technically synthetic data is just data that's generated by models in, bouncing off each other. And that is the exact type of synthetic data that we'd be producing on Aurelius. And the plan is to bootstrap in this whole thing, right? So in the early stages, we can potentially tap into some of these LLM as judge tools to generate large amounts of synthetic data. We can ask our validators in this process to, we're appending information on, here's our constitution and here's a prompt and a response, and here's all the scores associated with that. If you have enough of that data, now we can train our own Aurelius custom classifiers, our custom agents that are basically grading and serving as LLM as a judge against any type of red teaming effort that the miners are putting forth on any given model. Does that make sense?
Sort of. So, okay, you're hunting for frontier lab clients, like your enterprise contracts. These are like unlimited money type companies like Anthropic and, Amazon. Why can't they just create their own synthetic data? Why do they need you?
Yeah, and they definitely are behind closed doors. I think this touches on part of the thing I was talking about earlier is the reason why the reason why there are fewer players in the alignment data industry is because Microsoft or OpenAI, they want to align their models to their own goals, and they don't care to necessarily open it up to group feedback. And there's not enough levers right now for any third party or anyone at all to be like, well, we'd like to know, could you show me what this thing really values? How does it reconcile your bottom line versus safety or legality or all these other types of things? So essentially for the frontier labs, it's kind of like they are doing this, but they are generating synthetic data, and they do some other things as well. They have like red teaming communities, basically like green lit AI startups that Microsoft bounces ideas off, and they might give them access to models that they're testing. They even open up like bug bounties. I think when they released GPT OSS 120 billion parameter open source model, they also put out like maybe like $1 million, $500,000 bug bounty for red teaming. So they use a combination of like dangling little things out there like bounties and the red teaming community. But behind closed doors, they have teams of maybe 5 or 10 people who are constantly lobbying. So, okay, I read this extremely interesting book, Empire of AI, right? And it talks about the story of Scam Allman, right? And they talk about what I'm talking about right now is literally the reason Anthropic exists. Because within Microsoft, you have 100% of your compute cycles and your resources. And then it's a constant tug of war between the safety team and the performance team of like, how should we make it better at math and coding, or should we make it safer? And 95 people out of 100 at Microsoft or OpenAI are like, let's just make it smart. But then the Amode, family was basically like, well, we want to create Anthropic because we want to change that ratio. But yes, this is a big problem. So my proposed solution is number one, to make people aware of this. Like, some of the most powerful technology in the history of humanity is being aligned and controlled in ways that are 100% opaque, and there's not really a lot of community or like independent scientific pressure, or even like consumer blowback, or like recourse for this type of control that they're exerting over their models. But even Anthropic, like they're the leaders in alignment research in terms of closed labs. They're putting out, they coined the term alignment faking because they're like, hey, we're generating lots of synthetic data. We're doing exactly what I'm describing. We're trying to align our model, but it's not working, and the model's lying to us, and we don't have a solution for why. And not that I'm some genius, but part of the problem is the centralization of this entire methodology. And I think that's obvious for anyone who is familiar with the blockchain. Then you see the virtues of bringing in a huge swath, potentially, hundreds or potentially thousands of, independent strategies from miners to create these prompts. And then a dynamic structure to grade these prompts for the validators as well could potentially alleviate one of these problems.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess the pattern recognition part of it just thinks that with anything big like this, alignment, there'll be the crisis solution thing. So something bad will happen. Some rogue AI kills 1,000 people. Then they bring in their solution, but it'll be like a government orchestrated thing. Again, this is just another reservation, which I think I've already said. Okay, so they're the synthetic things. I'm sure Mark's got other questions on the synthetic stuff. Okay. Oh, sorry. Last synthetic one. So yesterday I spent 2.5 hours in Tesco's car park because I didn't have internet at home, just doing 4 Zooms. And I was sat there doing the Zooms, and in front of me was the most retarded car park layout system I've ever seen. And I spent 2.5 hours just watching cars not being able to move, and then I saw the generosity and the opposite of generosity of humans not giving way. And I was just thinking, holy shit, this is just ridiculous. This is like a social just observation experiment here. And I was thinking, okay, so if I was an AI or a company wanted to design the best car park layout, but they wanted data on how humans move, how they behave, how they give way or not, would a way to explain synthetic data is that you would create a bunch of different car parks and a whole bunch of cars and humans walking and driving, and you provide that AI that fake sort of movement to that company. Would that be like a dumbed down example of providing synthetic data?
Yeah. I think just yes. And I think an even better way is like if you took all the real data of people moving around in
some TV footage.
If you took all that real data and then you had some algorithm that says we're gonna remove every 7th car and then generate a whole new data set. That's now synthetic data. Right? So you like superimpose, reasonable parameters on top of it.
Got it.
And make completely synthetic data. So that's a textbook example of what synthetic data is.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Okay, that's good.
So I think to add to that, or take this idea and put it on top of Aurelius, if you have a supervised fine-tuning data set, which is just data that has an absolute truth to it, even, just a ground truth to it, then you could get that from human feedback data, like we showed, or we could use a system of LLMs, working together. So LLM as a judge, and they're being passed prompts, and scoring those prompts. If you treat that as a ground truth, then that's a synthetic data set right there. And you can use that in reinforcement learning.
And what are your thoughts on Daniel Kocher-Tajlow's AI in 27 paper?
I hope he's wrong. Yeah, that's a scary one. 2027. That's a fast. I listened to your alignment, the video that you have on alignment on your YouTube yesterday.
Oh, cool.
And I completely agree that the forecasting is just pulled closer and closer. It seems like,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Terrifying. That makes sense. It's like, holy shit.
Really terrifying. Yeah, I think my just one thought on that is we have a window of opportunity. So alignment is really closely tied with interpretability. And that just means our ability to look into the black box and reverse engineer what's going on, how it thinks. And we still have this window of the competency of the models. We can still kind of follow along and understand how how they're reasoning, how they came to these conclusions, how alignment is impacting its behavior. But as you scale and these models have more parameters and there's more compute that's going into them, more data, it falls off a cliff really quickly. And then you're at the mercy of a dumber AI to interpret a smarter AI on your behalf. And then you have the chicken and the egg problem where, like, well, how do you align a smart model? Well, you have to align a dumber model. Well, that dumber model is still a lot smarter than us, and we don't know how that one works either. So good luck, So that's why this is, I'm really passionate about this, is to, potentially make some headway in this alignment space. So.
And last question before I give this the floor to Mark. What advice did Const give you?
Well, he essentially is the biggest piece of advice he gave me is there's a lot of pros and cons of using synthetic data, and there's a lot of potential challenges that I could encounter on the blockchain side of things with, basically things like inference verification to know that a prompt was run on a specific model is a very tough challenge to try and solve for. And this is something that we'll potentially have to work our way up towards on Bittensor itself. But getting back to just using LLM as a judge, there's also pitfalls to this type of synthetic data as well. So it's going to be a big challenge to make sure that our data has integrity and it's not simply like some lazy, crappy LLM as a judge, and then that makes all the data completely just noise and doesn't get anywhere. So this is actually something he said he was working on in 2023, something similar to this effect of like a LLM as a judge type of system on Bittensor. So overall, he's supportive of the idea, and he's helping us kind of steer clear of some of the challenges. So in the short term, yeah.
Go on, Mark.
Hey, thanks for doing slides. I enjoyed the slides. I always like it when people do slides.
We got 2 more hours if you want.
Yeah, it's always a win. But and you sped through some of the more complicated stuff there, but it's all fairly complicated. How do you explain to simpletons what it is that you do?
Well, I would say that the best way is, just in a nutshell, is you're trying to change how the model thinks. Like, I guess this isn't a simple example, but when you or I think, what's happening is, we have information processing and it goes left and right in the brain and it goes here and there's all these connections, but there is a general trend, and the words you say, your tone, your sense of humor, all those things. There's an overall personality of those things. And what we're attempting to do is take the same idea in computers, LLMs, and just try to control how those things look. Because if you don't, then 99.9% of the time, it might be fine. But that 0.1% of the time, maybe not today because you're using a chatbot, what's the worst that could happen? It says something terrible and that's not great. But tomorrow, if it's wielding, some kind of economic apparatus with a lot of autonomy, or God forbid, some type of military systems are under this type of control, and we don't have the problems with alignment figured out, then, you can use your imagination. There's a lot of terrible, terrible outcomes. So that's essentially what we're looking to do, is instill these principles into LLMs in a reliable way.
Okay, so if you're explaining all that to your mum or your grandma, I think they would have
I would have lost him.
20 seconds. Like,
Yeah.
can you explain what you do in 20 seconds? Is it possible? Because it's a hard topic.
Yeah, I think we're attempting to control how models think on average. That would be the best
hard, isn't it?
top-down way. Yeah, it's
hard,
tough.
really.
It's tough.
The simpler you want to explain something, the more complicated it is to explain it that way. It's harder. I and I think it's important in Bittensor because I think that people want to understand stuff, and there's a lot of subnets that they're doing a lot of very complicated things, and people want that level of understanding, and they want they want to understand it themselves, possibly before they invest in it. You know, what's sometimes people invest in hype, but sometimes smarter investors either invest in the person behind it or because they understand what it is. And I think anyone that takes the time to watch all of that and to go through your presentation, they thoughtfully pull together slides. I think and have an idea for what it is, but a challenge for you, as it is for every subnet, is to articulate what you do in a really, really simplistic way.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, without a doubt. And for what it's worth, the Bittensor community is like way up there in terms of like average IQ in terms of communities, especially within crypto. And Bittensor itself is really, really complicated.
yeah,
Maybe
but
one, yeah.
but we wanna pull other people into Bittensor.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They want to
No.
understand it, and not everyone is a right curver. That's you know, that's just not it's not true, is it? And people want to understand it. So we need to be able to articulate what we do in a much more simple fashion, and I
Mhm.
think that's incumbent upon all of us, but it's a tricky thing to do. Um, so, but maybe on a very, very simple level, you are you're teaching AI to think in a more human fashion, so it isn't a danger to us at some point in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's absolutely, there's lots of definitions that fit into this, and that's part of the problem. I think, maybe the best way is to draw the parallels because you're still training the model, right? When you align a model, it's trained. And so instead of everyone knows what training is, and instead of just increasing its ability to do math or coding or reason as a whole, it's kind of like instead of giving it knowledge, we're giving it wisdom. That's really what we're doing. So as the data scales, its intelligence and all this knowledge, and it can pull from all of these aspects of this data that increases lots of different of its capabilities, its reasoning, natural language processing, and that's all knowledge. But what alignment is like wisdom and how to apply that knowledge. That's, I guess, that's Mark. You helped me realize the best way to explain it. That's the best way.
Wait, so your subnet effectively does two things then. It provides synthetic data and it's also fine tuning.
No, so the intention is not for fine tuning for our subnet, right? It's to provide those data sets. So anyone, if you had a startup and you wanted to make sure that your chatbot is not going to spout off some hate speech, then
So just synthetic data. So your customers can then do the fine tuning and
that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
I'm yeah, you're still a paradox in my head, mate. Honestly, like you as a person are very investable. Like you're smart, you're honest, you're like, yeah, I really like you as a person. I still have no idea how you're going to get revenue. I know you're going to sell the synthetic data, but how, what words do I need to hear to fully understand how much money you're going to get and how soon? Because that's a big hole in my brain at the moment. I can't
Well,
bridge that chasm.
I think if we take it baby steps, right, and we assume we can have this proof of concept where we can generate this idea, this data at a steady clip. The plan is to take these. So here's like stage one, right? I mentioned there's lots of bells and whistles and lots of LLM as a judge ideas that we want to pull into this, and we will. We want to get there. But in the early stages, picture this. Miners are crafting lots and lots of prompts. Those are passed to validators. Validators take those and they run them on, whatever, Llama, 3.2 or whatever. And they're outputting, whatever they're outputting. And, pepperoni pizza is the best. Okay, great. Let's categorize this. We can do simple evaluations on things like toxicity or hallucination rate or bias on those types of text outputs. If we get enough of those, we can start publishing to open source places like Hugging Face, right? Here's a 30,000, piece data set for supervised fine tuning on all of this, pepperoni pizza data, whatever. And essentially the plan is to get our proof of concept doing that. So the most dumbed down, simplistic way possible. As we can potentially add additional elements to how our miners and validators score this data, we can potentially incentivize, hey, Siam, you have your kid model, V2 or whatever, and let's benchmark it. Let's see how it performs against this, template. And after we're done, we can say, hey, by the way, if you'd like to improve this, let's go ahead and fine tune your model on our data sets. So, pending the efficacy of these data sets, we might say, hey, 15%, it performs 50% better after you fine tuned on this Aurelius, data set. That could potentially have repercussions, that could get people interested, because a lot of these open source models have, millions of downloads, people use them every day. And so if we can prove that these models are safer, or easier to use, or just overall more conforming to a standard of alignment, and there are a few like industry benchmarks and things like that. So if we took one of those industry benchmarks and created a data set to make models more performant on those, then this is how we start to get some buy-in and some potential credibility in the alignment industry.
So how
then it
go for it. Sorry.
Well, and then it's just a matter of, taking that to smaller enterprise customers or startups, or there's even demand for this type of data, research institutions and potentially like regulatory bodies for this exact type of alignment data. And we see lots of alignment bounties out there. So all the people posting those are essentially, fishing for certain types of misalignment, which is potentially something we could go after as well, like those bounties. But the plan is for the fine-tuned data sets and essentially getting proof of concept and then taking this to market with smaller customers first.
And so for someone that's doing exactly the same thing as you're doing, but not on Bittensor, what is your edge here? Like, can you create that synthetic data a lot cheaper than a normal AI lab?
Yeah, without a doubt, because we're not paying for compute, right? So that's the beauty of it all, and it speaks. That's the biggest one. So the marginal cost of this is gone, because
Are you using Shoots or Targon or what?
likely be still up in the air, but likely Shoots for this phase I just described, like the moderation tools and all that. It'd probably be easiest to do it on Shoots, but we've been in talks with Targon as well to potentially go that route. So I just lost my train of thought. What was I saying? No, it's okay. Yeah, sorry. What was?
Well, so
We're
I'm
start talking about Shoots.
trying to work out who's going to buy this and when you're going to get some money.
Oh, right. So yeah, the proof of concept, hopefully within the next couple months, and then we can generate this data at a steady clip. Use that to basically generate goodwill in the ecosystem and the alignment space as a whole. And then, my background is enterprise sales, right? So this is me spearheading this effort with smaller enterprise businesses to basically take our proof of concept and be like, we want to, potentially incentivize peer review research and have this actually really well-defined understanding of this type of data. Oh, I know what your question was. It was about the marginal cost of competitors. So because we have that marginal cost advantage and because we have the decentralization advantage from Bittensor itself, it's our base thesis that our data will be more performant because we can avoid things like overfitting and alignment faking due to the decentralization aspect itself. And there's not a lot of like traditional AI startups that are working specifically on alignment. There are a few.
Okay. So, but you've got experience in enterprise sales, and that's going to be your first market here.
Right. Yeah. That's absolutely the biggest opportunity for this data by far is an enterprise. Yeah.
And is anybody selling something similar right now? And we got any revenue numbers on that? Got any idea of how much people are spending on this?
There's not a lot of data on this specifically, and I think that when you look at the total market for alignment data, there's open source data sets, and there are some avenues for like licensed data sets, and they're relatively small. And I mentioned that's because total data is like 99%, alignment data is like 1%. So it's a scarce yet really valuable resource. And for the frontier models, as we talked about, it happens, behind closed doors, and this is a longer process to create enough of a forcing function for them to potentially open their doors and, solicit something like third-party alignment data for their models. But for smaller customers, like I said, if you had a chatbot or, Wells Fargo as a, AI investment, advice platform or whatever, then to align those models, it's more of a, they just have the application themselves, and they don't necessarily want to deal with, generating alignment data and producing that can be expensive because it's a tougher nut to crack. It's not as simple as throwing compute at the problem because of all those overfitting and alignment faking problems that we talked about in the past. So there has to be a really well designed methodology in order to make this data actually perform it. So, yeah, the plan is it's to start with smaller enterprise customers, and part of this as well is it still remains to be seen the throughput that we'll have in this type of data. So how big we can make these data sets themselves. And that's part of the challenge that we have, as a whole. It's part of our challenge to create a market for this.
Okay. And then, so kind of get something to sell first and then create a market and sell it. And then what are you going to do when you've got revenue flowing in?
So we have plans to build basically an additional tech stack to integrate with our alpha token, which I haven't talked about the alpha token yet, but essentially the plan is to have a data marketplace that can be, token gated and give access to data sets and other APIs and potential leaderboard tools or benchmarking tests through the token gated access. So that's one, building out the tech. Another thing we want to explore, I'm personally really excited about, is incentivizing peer review research. So we want to take this data and actually have something like, hey guys, look, this is a real product that has real impact in this, alignment space. And so working with, incentivizing studies like that is definitely one area that we're really interested in. And then there's some other things we could build as well, just on the tech side of things, like making the marginal cost for miners and validators, more bearable by, subsidizing APIs and things like that. So essentially, yeah, we're just in the bootstrapping phase right now. We want to build up more tech. We want to incentivize peer review studies. We potentially are exploring, token buybacks. That's, not the route that I necessarily want to go, because I want to invest that into something that's more impactful in the long run. And I think that the token aspect as well, I explained half of what we want our token to do is like a utility commerce token. But the true function for the token is actually as a governance token. And this is tapping into the longer term vision for what Aurelius could potentially be. And I don't know if we have time to go into that, but it essentially looks like those constitutions that I showed you earlier in the slide deck that govern, how we define alignment. If we put on our thinking caps and chart out into the future and say, okay, let's assume this platform is growing and becomes a potential hotspot for third-party alignment data, which doesn't really exist. You have a whole bunch of watchdog miners that are antagonizing models, and they serve as like basically, watchdogs in this future state where you have lots of advanced models and they can categorize exactly how aligned, OpenAI's model is versus Claude versus everything else. Then the function of the token would be to ratify, add new constitutions, subtract old ones, reprioritize certain dimensions in those constitutions that define what alignment is. So in the longer state, it's a governance token that basically determines the state of alignment on this, or there could be multiple constitutions, states of alignment. And that would be kind of like opening up the public infrastructure for AI alignment of advanced AI in the future. That's the idea.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Right. Well, I think I've got everything that I need. What's the biggest challenge? What's going to stop you from getting something ready to sell in relatively short order?
Well, I think we already touched on it, right? This is, I don't shy away from the fact that we really are we have to invent a market for this type of thing. And that's definitely the biggest challenge, is to, have some type of forcing function for the developers of these models to listen to outside input on what data that they use to align their models. So that's by far the biggest. There's lots of technical challenges as well. Like I said, and Hans has reminded us that um, just some of the parameters that you have to play, in order to make everything on Bittensor work, with the game theory and limitations of, miners and validators, how to communicate and all those types of things. So we have technical challenges for sure, and we have a big challenge in developing this market. But I'm pretty confident that once we get our proof of concept and start generating this data, we can use it to get people really excited on alignment and get really excited on the idea that they're like, Bittensor is the perfect place to give birth to this platform, which can stand as like a counterbalance to technological concentration. That's ultimately what this is. Like, the ultimate vision of this is a counterbalance to the technological concentration and overall alignment, like ability for closed labs to align models in a completely opaque way. So if you think about the distributed intelligence network of Bittensor, is the perfect place to, give rise to this type of platform where anyone can come and debate and participate in the codifying and sort of establishing values and philosophies of how advanced models should be aligned. And we're in the bootstrapping phase now, so there's going to be some challenges that we have here in the short term. But we're, I'm really excited to work on this challenge. Really, really happy that our subnet is now a reality on 37 as of a couple weeks ago. So we're hard at work getting on this problem, and we know it's not going to be easy. But I think it's a really big, as Siam said at the beginning, it's one of the biggest existential challenges that we have today. And even if there's a 1% chance of this working, I would still say it's worth it. And I would still want to do it.
Yeah. What is your monthly OPEX?
Probably maybe 15K or so.
Okay. So how many people in your team again? So I missed that.
Yep. So it's me. I'm the CEO and the founder. We have a co-founder who's the COO. So that's 2, and a CTO, which is 3. And we have a handful of advisors.
Who are the other 2?
CEO, CTO, COO.
Yeah, but who?
Yeah.
Who are they?
The advisors?
No, you COO and CTO.
Oh yeah. So my COO, his name's Coleman Marr. He's been in crypto for about 10 years. He used to work. He was the head of growth at Babylon Chain, and prior to that, Polkadot. And I tailpilled him, earlier this year, and got him really excited. He was just an advisor, but then he was really excited about the project, so now he's come on board as my COO. My CTO his name's Volker, and he's got work. His past work includes working for IOHK, and he's worked on, he's a Solana dev, and I tailpilled him as well. I was interested to see how much effort it would take to get him to swap over from blockchains he's more familiar with. But yeah, so we're all one big happy family. Stefan from Macrocosmos, he's one of our chief advisors as well.
I love
Stefan. He's great. He's been amazing to bounce ideas off, and he's helping us, put together the vision for this and chart out the best way to get there.
Sweet. Go for it, Mark. Final question.
No. Whoa.
The final question.
The final question. Okay. All right. I'll ask the final question. So the final question is the one that we're asking everybody at the minute, Austin. And the question really is that our job, we've all got our own jobs in this space, and our job is to bring capital in. Revenue Search is out there really as a platform for subnets to talk about what they're doing. But what we're seeing at the moment is we're seeing a lot of rotation. We're just seeing money moving around subnets, and there's an argument that says that the work that we do in revenue search is just part of that. But that isn't why we do it. Why we do it is to bring capital in. To do that, we need more eyeballs on this show from the non-Bittensor community. So the question that we're asking is, who should we try and get on revenue search that's going to bring non-Bittensor eyeballs into this show? That could be from a broader crypto community. It could be from an investment community. It could be from anywhere you fancy. There's been a number of votes thus far for a man called Barry Silbert, but I don't know what you're saying about that.
Yeah, that'd be a great one. Although to your point, that is kind of the same pool of people that are already pretty familiar with Barry. I think probably someone I would say to stay within crypto and kind of open the doors. Maybe someone like Ansem. You know, he already is interested in Tao, and he I know he follows along, and he's an extremely influential. You know,
Sorry, who?
Ansem on Twitter. Ansem. He's a
I've never heard. Handsome.
Ansem, Ansem. Ansem. I'll send you a story. He's a big Solana KOL, and he's Tao build as well. So I'm sure he might come on.
Sorry, ANSEM.
Yeah.
EM. Okay, found him.
There we go. Well, that's why we asked the question.
Yeah. There you go.
I don't know what the answer is until you ask the question.
Yeah.
But I think that's it for revenue search today. I think we've explored that. I'm genuinely grateful when people put a bit of time and effort into prepping for us. I think that's really, really helpful. And hopefully you'll reflect on how you would explain what you do to simpletons. For what it's worth, I think that you are creating a suite of tools that help AI to be more human, to inject it with wisdom. So it isn't just super intelligent, but it's got the wisdom and lived experience that humans have to not be a danger to us when it has the power to do so. And I'm excited about you creating a market where there is none and selling into that, and then supporting your alpha token when that revenue flows. But that's it, I think, from me. Any more for Emerald?
All right, guys. Thank you so much. This is a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. Really grateful to be on and have this talk with you guys.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I've been looking forward to this, and yeah, this is the topic I literally, most of my YouTube videos about this sort of stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, well, we have a lot of moving parts, and we're moving as fast as we can. So I keep you up to date on all the exciting stuff we have going on, and you know, we'll take it from there. But hopefully, big things come in the near future, and you know, thanks again, guys.
Fantastic. Welcome back on any time, Austin. It's been a pleasure.
All right, guys, take it easy.
cheerio.
Bye-bye.